Hello and welcome to the Be Better Podcast, where we believe every area of your life has a little more potential you can tap into, and that it is completely possible and available for you to get a little bit better in every area of your life. I am your host, Clarissa Parody, and I have trained and worked in the worlds of business, strategy, leadership, and performance. And I am the person who believes and creates success where there appears to be ceilings. And if you are the type of person who wants to get a little better, whether it's in your personal life, your professional life, your love life, you are in the right place. It is a great day to change your life. Let's go. Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome back to the Be Better Podcast. Today, I am here with Sam Led from Sam Led Consulting. Thank you so much for joining me. Before we get in, I'm going to read your bio. Okay. Combining his studies from the University of South Florida and Southeastern University, Sam shares a groundbreaking new understanding that has helped thousands of people tap into their natural innate health and resilience so they can overcome anxiety, fear, and unhealthy habits without strategies, techniques, or willpower. Sam has become a powerful conduit for those wishing to recover and flourish successfully from any major life setback or loss in their lives. After being misdiagnosed multiple times, oh man, I have lived in that world, by well-meaning mental health professionals or regular health professionals, right? He was finally diagnosed with ADHD and experienced severe anxiety for over 2 decades. He was suffering silently. Then in 2005, after a series of traumatic events that led him down a rabbit hole, he finally began to see that the nature of his own suffering was made up and illusory, that he was one thought away from mental well-being, as we all are. That we are not living in a world of our outside circumstances, but we are living 100% in a world made up of thought, and that the truth to who we are is below the noise. Well, let me tell you, you
did that in one breath, I think.
I think so.
Excellent.
And you're going to ruffle some feathers. One thought away from mental health.
One thought away, everybody.
I love that. Okay, let's
if it
hear
takes
more.
2 thoughts, then go with God. You know, it's interesting. I was thinking of, I was watching, the other week, I was watching Stephen King's The Shining. You know, come play with us, Donnie. You remember the scene with it's a freaking movie, right? Even 40 years later, you know, as a grown adult watching it, and you watch that and you're like, okay, is this really happening? Is this whole thing, is the caretaker insane? The answer is he's insane, and underneath the insanity is quiet. And like, you wake up from the nightmare of the story being played between your ears, this machine code, this algorithm of thought and thinking being run between your ears 24 hours a day. And you see like that your brain loves you, just wants to keep you safe, but it's far from perfect. And it's going to do whatever it can to keep you safe, depending on who you are, but especially if you're like me and you have a very sensitive brain, it can be really, you can suffer a little bit in your thinking. So I saw that movie. I'm like, okay, that's a nightmare. But we have nightmares when we're sleeping sometimes. But when we wake up from it, we're okay. Like, we're fine.
We
might
shake
be
it off.
Startled, we shake it off. Well, that's kind of how thought works. Like, thoughts moving through us. Like, in my brain, I got a super speedy, like F1 car, Ferrari of a brain. I mean, I got 20 windows open in my mind. When I saw, like, many years later, and I was never shown this, like, you know, when you're in school, especially public school here, and I grew up in South Florida and Connecticut, but I'm here in California almost 20 years, you don't learn how to use your mind. I wasn't told, and probably you weren't either. Things just work perfectly for you. But we do have all of our challenges in getting caught up in our thinking. If I knew what I knew now about how mind really works versus what my intellect is telling me how mind works, and what our mental health system and what clinicians and what we've been conditioned to believe how mind works, I would have saved a lot of time and suffering. But
right.
It's just the journey. It's like just our humanness, our frailties, and that's okay.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about what you do now.
Okay. So I'm a transformational coach, and I'm a podcaster and soon to be author. I have a book coming out. Here's the wood. Knocking on my head, ladies and gentlemen, this is wood. Very soon we are working with an editor and doing all kinds of stuff. I had to rewrite the book. It's been a decade in progress, but I had to rewrite the book again and wrote another 60,000 words. So it should be coming out hopefully we'll just say fall, and we'll just ... When it comes out, when it's supposed to come out, it's going to come out.
Perfect.
And the podcast is called The Fearless Now, and we're doing really great. I can't believe how well. I mean, I just got an email the other day. It's like, I see what my anxiety is now, and the way you said it, the way you kind of pointed to the quiet when we're not in our head, when we drop out of our thinking. It was like, I'm like, well, I didn't do anything. I just pointed back to who you really are, not your momentary anxiety. And it's just nice. We're helping a lot of people, and our audience is building by leaps and bounds. Thank God.
That's so awesome. So what got you here? Like to land in the world of transformational coaching?
Yes.
To work with all that, like going through the ADHD and the anxiety for decades, what got you through all of those things? Like start us from,
right. That was
the
training.
beginning. Training camp.
Take it back.
You went to Naval SEALs camp, but for your brain.
I went to Mental Health Navy SEALs Academy. Right.
There we go. Yes,
that was my basic training. Growing. So, I grew up in a nurturing family, grew up with a whole bunch of mental health professionals. I was surrounded by mental health. I lived in a mental health house, ladies and gentlemen. Father being a neuropsych, and mother being in the mental health field, working with kids with all kinds of developmental disorders, quote unquote disorders.
Right.
At the age of 7, I was diagnosed with a learning disability, but I couldn't understand what the heck was wrong with me. Like everyone else was doing my peers, my fellow students when I was little, maybe they could comprehend the story better, or they could do the times tables quicker. So maybe my brain wasn't working as fast at the time, but I was interested in writing. I was interested in creative endeavors and had great imagination, of course. And so they labeled me with this learning disability, and I couldn't, to this day, years later, I can't tell you what it is. For the life of me, it's visual motor this, and maybe I do have that label, and I don't blame the psychologist who diagnosed me with it. He's just doing his job, and he was trained and conditioned to look at the mind as something's broken. So fast forward, a decade and a half later to high school. I did really well in writing. I was in advanced placement courses, which is like gifted. I don't know if you have that in Canada. Is it like high school in Canada?
Yeah, we have a few different programs: advanced placement, international baccalaureate. We have a few that.
I wasn't baccalaureate. That's next level advanced placement. So I was on one part of on one side of the academic pendulum. I was like getting A pluses and 4.0, and I don't know what it's like in Canada. And I was really excelling. Okay. But mathematics and physics and geometry and that part of the brain, I was really deficient. I really was just very poor at. And because of that, I would spend half my day with like the cool kids, in one building, with all the honors and advanced placement classes. The other half of the day, I would be in a separate building for the slow learning. And they still call it that, which is in 2022, I can't believe it, with the slow learning development. And, it's called emotional handicap. Like we're thrown in this classroom, and most of the kids in there's nothing wrong with them. They just learn differently. And I'm not talking about like physical, impairments, cerebral palsy and stuff. I'm talking like kids with diagnosed ADHD, kids on the spectrum, right?
Right.
These are all brilliant kids, but no one showed us how to use our mind to work for us. Like we all have these brilliant supercomputers. And for kids on the spectrum, for kids that have ADHD, or maybe they're undiagnosed ADHD, or kids who have learning disabilities, they spend most of their academic career feeling that they're broken. They may not voice it. They may not say anything, but they feel that stigma since, since day one. And psychologists and mental health professionals, they're all well-meaning, and there's some brilliant, therapists out there. I'm not poo-pooing that. And it's not their fault. They've been conditioned to look at dysfunction, right? To treat dysfunction, to find out what's wrong. But why don't we find out what's right? Like some of the greatest inventors, creators authors, scientists, playwrights, podcasters are neurodiverse. Okay. Einstein, dyslexic, terrible learning disabilities. And he suffered in the classroom. You know, if you read his biography, he suffered for decades. It's, you know, just they thought that he would never succeed at anything. Theory of relativity. Come on. That's a gold star right there. So I'm in that same category. And I'm not saying that there's, you know, I have a neurodiverse brain that just works differently. It goes to the beat of its own drum innocently. And there's over 119 million of people like me walking around with a neurodiverse brain, whether it's ADHD or whatever the diagnosis, it doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. And when I saw like what was going on, like there's nothing wrong with me. I just have a brain that works differently. I was able to really let go of some of the suffering, believing the labels, believing the stigma. And again, teachers and, you know, educators and mental health professionals, they don't mean anything by it. They just don't know any better. They're conditioned to treat this way. Look for dysfunction. We need to fix it. No, you don't need to fix anything. There's nothing wrong with any of you. Depression, OCD, it's, you know, we look at it as we're trying to look at thought as something we need to treat. You can't treat thought. You can't fix thought. You can't stop thought. You know, you can use medication, which is great if it calms the noise down. But once we see and start pointing to what's underneath the noise of thought and thinking, once we see that we are not the sum total of our thoughts, that we have a brain that loves us, you know, that wants to keep us alive, it will do anything to keep us alive.
Oh,
it's like your first crush.
It's dino brain, man. It's like
Dino
you
brain.
are just wired to survive. That is the base function of your basal brain
totally.
is keep you going, run
you're
from
a
the mountain
neuroscience.
line.
You're a neuroscience whisperer too.
Gently.
But it's like the Geico commercial with the caveman. Like we're walking around with a caveman brain. And when you think about like folks with ADHD, you know, I don't know if you have colleagues, friends that you know of that have ADHD. We're some of the most empathic. And again, we also have our frailties. You know, there's another side of it, but we all have frailties, whether you're neurotypical, if you want to even call it that, or neurodiverse. But we have a super brain because we're able to see underneath the noise when we want to. We're able to see between the lines. We're very intuitive, very empathic. We're very, patient, not with ourselves, and especially when we're overwhelmed, and because we're very sensitive in terms of, we do have sensitivity issues, with stimulation wise, auditory or doesn't matter, but there's nothing wrong with that either. Like if 119 million people have some form of quote unquote ADHD, right? Then how could there be something wrong with them? If I was the only one, Clarissa, that had ADHD, yeah, I'm messed up. I got to get some help, but I'm not.
No,
and neither
not
are the
even
folks.
Close.
I mean, sometimes, I could be a pain in the ass sometimes. Ask my partner, but we all could be a pain in the ass. And what I also saw, and this is the understanding I share with my clients, I work with folks in recovery. I've seen clients that were really suffering and not making any progress with, being caught up in the recovery, the revolving door of the recovery, drug and alcohol recovery system. And I said to them, I said, well, tell me, take me back to a time when things were great. And so they would take me back to like childhood or, high school, whatever. I said, okay, so tell me, was it because of you were just feeling calm? Was it you laughing, you having a good time? I said, what is it? What does that have, what's the difference between back then when you were just feeling calm and happy and right now when we're just two people just like dropping in and having a great time talking, laughing, like underneath the noise, all of us are perfect. There's a great coach named Michael Neal, who is he's a world renowned principle. It's called the 3 principles coach. And he said, and I love this, you're going to love this, this metaphor, that we're diamonds covered in doo-doo, covered in shit, layered in lipstick. So the diamond, right, is our essential nature, that our North Star is well-being. Who we are is good. Who we are is expansive, and who we are is love, and who we are is resilient. Our default state, our factory equipment, our I call it our OEM, like you buy a car and the OEM equipment on the car, you have to get OEM, you have to bring it to the dealer to bring, to get the OEM shocks, and it's like twice the amount. Well, our OEM equipment, our default state, our divine nature is resilience. And you can ask any of the great, you can read any of the great sages. You can, read Viktor Frankl's The Man's Search for Meaning. You can, all the great sages from Buddha to Jesus talk about the same thing that I'm pointing to, that we are not the sum total of our thinking. No, we are not our thoughts. That once we slow down, right, and we get really quiet, we then see who we really are. And, we are guided by this inner GPS. We have this inner intelligence within us, guiding us along this river, My So-Called Life, like the TV show, it's once we see that life's got us, and, we shouldn't be really scared of this human experience. Like, why are we so scared of being anxious? And I suffered from panic attacks for years, and sometimes I still get them. But the more I see, I'm going to be okay on the other side of it. It can't kill you. It's thought.
Totally. I love that.
We're just overwhelmed.
I love that. Because if you even think about it, it's okay. Maybe some of the people listening aren't struggling with mental health or aren't neurodiverse, or maybe don't identify that way. I'm like, man, have you ever had a day where you could just lose your mind on a colleague and you didn't? If you were completely defined by your thought, and who you were was your thought, you would have completely acted on it. And let me tell you, there are things that happen in this head that I'm ashamed.
Oh my God.
Happen in my head. I'm like, I didn't think that, I swear.
Yeah. But you could write, you'd be Stephen King. You could write a horror story from the things going on in your mind. Totally.
Honestly, like the evil that I'm capable of is that I can think, but it's also like the possibility you can think of. And so, it can kind of go both ways. But if you're not sitting there being like, I don't understand what it's like to be anxious. Okay, well, first of all, congratulations. That's amazing. But it's like, there's going to be other thoughts that you're like, oh my God, did I think that? Or, oh my God, is that even real? Or is that if you're I can remember the thought that when I was with one of my coaches, she said, if you're hearing the thought, are you the thought, or are you the listener? And I was like, oh, my thought isn't me. And being able to create that distinction, I was like, oh, well, I'm completely free. That was just some asshole thought.
Right. I love that, because that's exactly, you got it. So, life, like if you ever go to Vegas, they have all these big hotels like the Bellagio, et cetera, and they have the most amazing, buffets in the entire world. The history of wasted food is Las Vegas. It's Sin City and wasting food and money and everything else. And so you go to, thoughts like you have a salad bar of thought. Thought has nothing on us. And again, we all fuck up, excuse my French. We all forget who we are. We all get caught up in the machinery, right? What I saw, and then we get to the salad bar thought, and I'll get to what I saw, but the salad bar thought, you can choose, what you want to pick up from that salad bar. Like, you're not going to eat 10 pieces of steak. You're going to have one piece. You have discernment, right? It's all there. Yeah. And you can choose what you want to give life, life to in terms of thought. You can choose what thought you want to bring into the world. And once we see that, I've talked to people in recovery saying, I wouldn't have been arrested for that DUI if I didn't listen to my thinking. Where were you, Sam, when I was being handcuffed off the PCH in Malibu, because I listened to my thinking and got in the car and started driving. So that's where I'm pointing to. And the more we see the machine code, like, your brain's a machine, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. The world of the form and the world of the formless, the brain is the interpreter, and thought is the technology. Thought's like the tool, right? So it's kind of like, it could be like it's like Google Translate. That's how the brain works sometimes. Google Translate's terrible with, like, you're trying to speak to someone that you like, or you want to talk to, and they're like Swedish. So you pull out Google Translate and you say it to them in Swedish, and like, what is that? That doesn't mean anything. It's the same thing how our brain works. Our brain's like Google Translate, or like Alexa. Like, I remember the other day I was asking Alexa to play Paul McCartney, and she played Prince.
Close, but no.
but see that the brain it's a machine. And once we can see the game the brain's playing to keep us safe, and once we see that, you know, we don't have to suffer if we don't want to, that there is a whole beautiful, calm, loving existence just waiting for you to pay attention to. And it's in that space, as again, I'm quoting Michael Neal because he's one of my favorite coaches and he's brilliant. It's hard to not quote him. He calls it the space before thought, or the space within. You know, it's like that. Some researchers call, or scientists call it, that flow state, the ultimate quiet. It's the juicy spot. It's the sweet spot.
So good. Totally. When you hit it, there is, I'm like, whoa. Have you ever, you know, when you come out of flow, you're like, I was in flow.
Yeah.
And then trying to get back, you're chasing it. It's like, it's insane. But when you're in it, when you can just drop in, it is wild.
And time just like, you know, you're in the flow state where time just speeds up or slows down, right?
Well, and that's when you're
time,
like,
you just don't know where it went, right?
Time isn't real. I knew that was true. And there's my evidence.
It's like quantum jumping, but see, that's the thing. Like, that's all on offer for us. But see, and again, the frailties of the human species, but the issue, it's not even an issue. It's, we get addicted to our drama.
Oh my God, yeah.
And the greater the drama, the greater the illusion. So like, if you, ladies and gentlemen, if you're really pissed off at your husband or your partner or whomever, the guy who cut you off on the freeway, get really curious about what's going on there. That's not you. That's a machine code. That's the brain. You know, the brain needs to do stuff. The brain is a brilliant machine. It's the most brilliant piece of technology, you know, since the beginning of civilization, the humankind, but it's still a machine, and it needs to like get involved in stuff. It's always got to do stuff, you know, and when the brain, as wonderful as it is, has its limitations, and the intellect has its limitations. And once you start seeing that, you know, when the intellect gets kind of is hitting a wall, that's when anxiety and frustration starts happening. That's not the time to start believing you're thinking.
No.
It's juicy, but we get addicted to it because it's neurochemicals, right?
Totally.
And that's why we have soap operas. I mean, we've had soap operas in this country for 50 years. My mother's been watching the same soap opera since 1973. The character's getting older, but it's the same story. But our brain works the same way. It's juicy. Presence, enlightenment, nirvana, the flow state, the fearless now, which is my podcast, you know, Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. It's not sexy. It's just quiet, and it's calm, and it's, you know, that's who we really are. It's the nothingness. It's the, you know, it's the isness, as Sid Banks calls it. He was a Scottish mystic that had this enlightenment experience in 1973. And he kind of saw, like, he was this very common guy. He was actually from Canada, but he was born in Scotland. He grew up in worked in Salt Spring Islands. I think that's in Canada. Yeah, yep. BC. And he had this enlightenment experience. He's like, oh, wait a second. I can point to love. I don't have to suffer. Like, that's thought. Like, that's not me. That's just thought. And thought's a great technology. If you know, we're just using the equipment wrong, essentially.
Totally.
And I learned how to use the equipment.
Right. And like, to point to, I know there's going to be some people who are very frustrated with some of the conversation because they're like,
because I think what they're into, like, right now.
Oh, right. Like, totally.
What?
And what? And not only that,
talking about?
There's stuff going on in the world, and you could totally be in upset and suffering. And this is where man's search for meaning was like, for me, because like, I didn't have to live through World War II.
Neither did I. Thank
God. But like that, if you need to understand that you can find peace, stillness, and purpose in the midst of suffering, and you need evidence that that's possible from a different time era, that it's possible. And there is lots of stuff going on in the world. There's lots of gross stuff. There's lots of great stuff. But what a time to be alive. And we can have these conversations where it doesn't have to be like a trigger warning, or you can just be responsible for your state. So you talked about like, how, you know,
can I give you an example of that real quick?
Yeah, for sure.
And then I'm sorry to make
oh God, no.
So I was watching, you know, what's going on in Ukraine. It's horrible. And I'm half Ukrainian, which is really, my grandfather was from a small village called Radimishl, which is actually barely even there now. It was basically wiped out during the Holocaust. Anyways, but it's still there. But so I was watching something on BBC or I don't know, CNN probably, where it was like hundreds and thousands of civilians in the subway tunnels, because that's where they, it's a bomb shelter that can withstand basically almost a nuclear blast. And all this stuff is happening to their city. And they don't know if they're going to be alive another day, right? They can be bombed. Who knows? And they're homeless, basically. They had to leave their apartment buildings and their homes. And they're singing with candles, like their favorite Ukrainian folk songs. And people are like holding each other and laughing and singing and crying. And there's this crazy war going on out there. So hope is our default state. That's when we're really present and staying right here in this moment. But our brain likes a future fantasy thing. Our brain likes to project and make plans and it becomes a fiscal report. So the brain does that because it thinks that thought's going to keep us safe, but that's part of the illusion, which we know doesn't keep us safe.
No, I mean, safety in and of itself, I would say is a complete illusion. Like you don't know walking out your doorstep if you're going to be fine. I had fresh ice that I was not clear was there. And I went for a little skate on my driveway, and it's just like, I wasn't anticipating that. And I knew that can seem so like a cheap thrill, like, oh, that's not suffering, but like things could have gone wrong. One wrong slip, one wrong head concussion. You don't know what's going to happen. So the illusion of safety is and certainty, which is what our intellect likes to do, which I think is what you're pointing to, is just, it's not real.
Nonsense.
Not real.
It's not real. And there's a lot of people during the pandemic were laid off, right? Some people still are. And, they're worrying about how they can put food on the table. They have probably severance or whatever, they're living off of subsistence. And they're like worrying about what's going to happen 6 months from now. I said, you'll worry, you'll figure out when 6 months from now comes. Because we always know what to do when we're not in our thinking. Again, we don't do the greatest things, create the greatest pieces of art. We don't find that amazing partner or that amazing job when we're caught up in our intellect. We don't fall in love in our intellect.
Oh my God, wouldn't that be something? If you fell in love,
wow,
with your like the dating choices I would have made if I used my head rather
yeah, let's
than
do
my
this.
heart.
This is a good conversation.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What a
scary,
wow.
Right?
I mean, I could have been wiser.
well, but wait. So,
oh,
I think that's, it's all part of the journey. We don't have control of any of that.
No,
the brain thinks it has control.
Yeah. When's the last time you're like, I think I'm going to fall in love today? And you're like, that person.
We put together a 3-point plan.
I'm going to pick that person because I have seen people, I have met people in my life. I'm like, we should actually be best friends, but there's something doesn't work. And it's just like ships passing in the night.
And you can't explain it.
You can't explain. There's just je ne sais quoi. Like, I don't know what it is.
But if you relied on the intellect, because it looks good on paper.
Check. I was like, wow, we should be best friends. We should be married. We should start a business together. And sometimes it doesn't. How many things have I done, choices that I've made that have created insane results that were logical to begin with? I go back in time and I rationalize and justify it. But in the moment, I'm like, this makes sense for no good reason because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then I take action.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like, I was working with this same client that had the DUI, and he's like kicking himself, like, Sam, I should have not listened to my thinking at the time. I said, we were all doing our best with the level of thinking we have at that moment. So there's nothing ever wrong. There are no mistakes. And I know that's such a cliche, but once we really see like your day, your minute, your hour, your week is being scripted by this machine between your ears. Imagine if you walked around, tomorrow, Clarissa.
Okay.
Walk around, pretend like everything around you is neutral. Like there's no, like in, you're not looking at like a piece of cheesecake and then the narrator starts to click on and start creating a story around the cheesecake, or your coworker that's annoying. And then your brain is creating a story around do you see where I'm going? Like, imagine if you walked around during the day and your day wasn't scripted.
Yeah.
Everything outside of you, ladies and gentlemen, is completely neutral, but your brain will tell you otherwise. And once we see like the brain is the greatest used car salesman, the greatest screenwriter. It's the greatest Martin Scorsese,
Yeah.
producer. I mean, I can go on and on. I mean, why do you think Stephen King is like one of the greatest horror book writers? Science, because he took all the darkness, the craziness, and he learned he could put it into words. Like, but we get caught up and we forget who we are, and then we remember again. It's like, it's the
So
I would
what's
call
a way
it the cognitive cha-cha. Yeah,
cognitive cha-cha? What's the way you can find? So we're in the cluster of thought, the noisy, the messiest neighborhood on the block. How do
Yeah.
how do we find ourselves again? You're like, okay, connect. Hey, by the way, that is my favorite kombucha. It is so clean. That's one of the cleanest kombuchas.
It's vintage.
Synergy. It's a vintage.
It's a February 24th, 22.
Oh, wow. Fancy.
It's from Southern California grown.
Oh, look at that.
Oh.
It's from your homeland. Well, your present hometown ish area.
I'm almost.
You're Connecticut.
Close enough. Yeah.
Home is where the heart is, man. It's
right.
okay. Okay. So
right.
we get lost in the thought, we get in the messiness, and we're like, okay, we find ourselves again.
Yeah.
Like what's a way we can access that? Like what's something that we can, how are we one thought away from it?
What if I told you that your brain, despite how kooky and nutty and ridiculous it can behave sometimes, has a built-in self correction system? Like, how you're, and again, I always use computer metaphors. How I had my MacBook like froze up the other day. It has a built-in correction system. Thought always moves through us, whether we like it or not. We don't just like hold on to the same thought, and no, thought's moving through. It's like a ticker tape, right? It's like, so if you trust yourself and you have hope that whatever thought turbulence you're flying through, it always settles 100% of the time. We know it always settles, but because we feel our thinking, we think it's real. The only thing that our emotions are telling us. Now, there's nothing wrong with grief. There's nothing wrong with any of that because, and again, I don't have all the answers. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my disclaimer. Do your own discovery, search for yourself, do your own like background but don't listen to my words. Look for a feeling. And what I'm pointing to is that if you are anxious, overwhelmed because of your coworker or because your car broke down, you're just currently too zoomed in. It's a gift, even though it feels like shit sometimes, even though panic attacks are no fun, even though they come out of nowhere sometimes. It's the gift, like the check engine light on your car. All it's telling you is, Clarissa, you're too zoomed in. Back off, take your foot off the gas. Your mind is going too fast right now.
Slow down. It's like that downward spiral, like the second, and I find
that's all it's telling us. If you don't believe
grip
you're thinking,
onto it. Yeah.
But it's sometimes we take the bait and we because
God, I take the bait. I still take the bait sometimes. You take the bait,
and we all do. But being okay with and loving all your good, bad, and indifferent parts of you is what's important. But the most important thing is seeing like you're gonna forget, and that's okay. But you're never gonna beat the system. And no therapist, no doctor, nobody, they're not going to point you to something that's already there. Like your brain has this automatic kind of debugging system. It's like a software update, right? So like for instance, like you drive on the freeway, you don't get enough sleep, so you're already cranky, right? And then someone cuts you off on their freeway, and then you're like screaming at them, and it gets ugly. Hopefully nothing else happens. And then you get off your exit where your office is. Within 20 minutes later, you're fine. Right? Look at kids. They're the greatest examples.
Oh my God, such good examples.
They have it like my nephew would have a temper tantrum, right? Like it's like the world's coming to an end, like fire and brimstone. It looks like fire is going to come out of his mouth. He's screaming, he's kicking his feet. You watch him, 10 minutes later, he's back to playing like it never happened.
Yeah.
The only difference between us and kids is that we have memory. And the memory is, we have this hard drive. Again, it's all machine. It's not real. It's machine code. It's pretty persuasive sometimes. But once we see like, if you're an adult walking on this planet, you got a couple of decades of of files stored up there, and some of it you're not even aware of, that sometimes the brain just hits play because it thinks that it can package up an old trauma or an old like bad thing to remind you of, don't do that, Sam. Remember when you put your finger on the hot stove and you burn yourself? Well, it's good for that. That's the memory. Don't put your finger on the flame. That's a good old file, good memory. But with a lot of it though is nonsense. But the brain doesn't know the difference between a ham sandwich that has E. coli on it and saber-tooth tiger. It really doesn't. And once we can see the limitations of our intellect and that the brain's going to get involved, and it's a busybody. The brain's like a helicopter pilot, parent, just constantly in your stuff. You can have compassion for yourself when you forget and you get wrapped up and you do have a panic attack. And the more you just notice the illusion, the more you kind of point to like, oh, I'm starting to get wound up again. My thinking's going 100 miles a minute, especially for neurodiverse types like myself, will have just different neurochemistry working differently. The more you are aware of it, the more you just notice it. Like, that's not you. That's temporary thought turbulence. It will move through you. And then, the ego will say, no, Sam, you don't want that to happen again. What happened 20 years ago? Remember what happened, what the consequences refer back. I could go, it's all hyperbole.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all story. Once you see the story being created in real time, you can really not get caught up in the drama, your own drama, or other people's dramas of their dramas. And you won't be so scared of being anxious of your anxiety. You won't be so fearful of your phobias. There was a great study done, and then I'm going to shut up because I know you want to say something. There was a great study done by, I forgot the name of the study, the researchers involved, where they took a whole bunch of 20 or 30, not patients, but
Subjects.
Thank you.
No
Subjects
problem.
who were scared of spiders. So they had arachnophobia.
Ooh, it's a good one.
I can understand it. A lot of legs and they look like alien creature. Okay,
creepy
whatever.
crawly.
Creepy crawly. Yeah, you don't like creepy. That's right. I forgot.
I don't like critters. I mean, I like
Sorry.
critters. I like critters at a distance. Okay, it's just what I prefer.
Okay, so just ignore this imagery. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so they brought all these these phobic subjects of arachnophobia into this room, and these guys in white lab coats bring a box with holes in it, and they place the box in the middle of the room on a chair, and they say, "Ladies and gentlemen, in this box are 50 black widow spiders," and the whole room goes apeshit crazy, like they're like running to all sections. They're trying to find the fire exit because they think there's spiders in the box. Well, he walks up to the box and he opens up the lid and there's nothing in it.
Right.
The mind, ladies and gentlemen.
That's so good. That's so. How many times does it play tricks on us? A couple things that I wanted to draw attention to.
Yeah.
No, God, this is good. This is
Okay.
it's so juicy. Hopefully, my brain keeps everything. I have never been diagnosed with anything neurodiverse, but I think I just managed to dodge the system. So hopefully, I can keep it all in my brain. One of the things that you talked
You're
about,
undercover neurodiverse. You're
I'm secret. Yeah. I'm here to sabotage right. Like the mainstream beliefs on what it looks like. Watch me. One of the things that I notice is like when you're talking about the ticker tape and how it passes and that intensity that happens, when you look at those stimuli that happen in your environment. So the person that cuts you off, or the colleague that says whatever, or the coffee that spills in your lap, there are probably reactions that tend to be normal for you. So some people get hopeless, or some people get angry, and that is part of that programming. And I can remember finding out that I was like, oh, I really feel like nothing works. Like that was my underlying belief. And then I had to, once I understood that I had this belief that nothing works, like the technology doesn't work, the Zoom link doesn't work, it doesn't work, my iPhone doesn't click, whatever it is. I was like, oh, is that really true? Or is that just the thought that's governing it, that's having this show up in my reality as if it's true? Maybe what's actually missing is like a breath, a pause, some patience. And once I let go, all of a sudden my environment works. And so that was really interesting. And I don't know if I remember the second thing yet, but that was the one.
If you sit with it, like pretend like you're a hockey player, you guys like hockey up there, you Canadians, you crazy Canadians up there. And so, sometimes we get put in the proverbial thought penalty box when we start to really believe the nonsense, the allegory, the hyperbole, the story. Even it feels so real, especially if someone's, pointing fingers at us or being critical of us, our brain's going to judge, criticize, compartmentalize. It has to do something. It's like a puppy, it's always like getting into shit that it shouldn't get into. You can train a puppy to not, go to the bathroom in the house, right? Pee on the rug. You can't stop the brain from producing all kinds of crazy thoughts, but you can notice them.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also really see, like, when you're caught up, like, you can just like sit with it. You don't need to call, if you want to call a friend, it's great. I mean, especially depression and depression is really, the great metaphor I heard for depression, and you'll love this too. It's like overheating. It's an overheating hair dryer. If you ever go to like those cheap hotel hair dryers, and you plug it in and you're doing your thing, drying your hair, and then all of a sudden you basically blow the fuse in the room. Maybe it just only happened to me, but I've done it many times. I have a bad hair dryer juju. So that's the same thing with the brain's diagnostic system, the check engine. It's like a check engine light saying, Sam, you are too zoomed into your problem. You're creating too much story around it. You got to slow down. And that's what depression and anxiety is. Once we see like that has nothing to do with your outside circumstances, the brain's going to try to find a fall guy for why you feel anxious, because it wants to keep you alive and doesn't know any better. Remember, dealing with old equipment, stupid equipment. Not stupid, but very old.
It's what used to work, but it's applied to new things.
50,000 years ago.
Yeah,
right.
It made sense a long time ago.
Right.
But you
if
just
I was
if
I was a hunter, like if I was, the caveman, picture me in like the Geico commercial, caveman, and my I only would live to like 30, if that. But my job was very simple. Like, it was stimulus response. Like, I'd go hunt and provide for my family, protect my family. And when there was a saber-toothed tiger chasing or looking very, scary, threatening my family, I either would kill it, or we would be killed, or we'd run. So it was a very much simpler existence, but folks with very speedy brains were also great protectors, great gatherers, great hunters. But now we're considered a problem. Now we're considered, we're dysfunctional, right? It makes no sense. And it's very innocent. That, if you type in ADHD, for example, and I know we're going off on a segue. The first thing that comes up, you can Google right now, is it talks about executive functioning that is damaged. Okay. So that means that there's like over 100 million people walking around with damaged brains, but they're making great money. They still have a family, and they're functioning. Even if they weren't functioning, if they learned how to use their brain, like, for example, you want to learn how to fly. And I had a fear of flying because I had a bad thing happen, and I learned how flight works. So I'm not afraid anymore. But if you want to become a pilot, you learn the science of flight, you learn how to fly. You don't like focus on how dangerous flying is, or, how bad flying is for the environment, or, all the terrible things that flying does, to the world. No, you focus on how to fly a plane. Well, they taught us how to use our brain to work for us, not against us, our neurodiverse brain. Man, can you imagine how amazing this, like, we would be like, we'd have like the fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensions. Like, we would all figure everything. We wouldn't be like, it'd be amazing. But unfortunately it isn't. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So if people were to like, okay, I want to embrace my neurodiversity, I want to feel better about all of this, and like be one step closer to, like, I don't know, life fulfilled or a joyful way of being, like, how could people lean into that and use their mind in their favor?
That's a great question. And wonderful. That's a wonderful jumping off point for, the knowing that our essential nature is good and is hopeful and resilient. That's not like that's not, optional equipment. That's pre-installed at the factory when you're born. Knowing that your mind's going to work just a little bit different, knowing your gifts and talents, knowing what you're good at, and also having compassion for your frailties. I know that's a total, total cliche, but really having self-compassion. Like, for example, if, folks that are neurodiverse are misunderstood, we see the world a little bit differently sometimes. And that could be in relationships or in business partnerships or wherever you are, whatever station of life you're in. But seeing that there's nothing wrong with you, that I'm sure so many people have told you how brilliant you are in so many areas. Focus on that. Focus on how compassionate you are, or how empathic you are, and how creative you are, and how focused and how much you love certain things in your life, right? And realize that, like, it doesn't matter. Like, life's gotcha. Life's really gotcha if you slow down really to the speed of life, to this moment right now. And seeing that, like, it's a gift. Like, you have this high performance, like, F1 car, like it's a freaking rock star of a brain. And all that conditioning about how stupid we are and how broken and how dysfunctional we are, and how much, that we need to be fixed or we need to be treated. Well, if you're taking medication right now, look at it. Medication in itself is a software update. That's all it is. It's just neurochemicals. It's computer algorithms. But who you are is perfect. Who you are is, oh my God. Like, you want to talk about, like, underneath thought? Like, if you could walk around all day without the chatty Cathy, the narrator, just seeing everything in the present moment for what it is, and being grateful for what you have in that moment. Not to sound too pithy, but life is amazing. Like, you could have the best day of your life in Walmart if you wanted to. I mean, I personally, I don't like to shop, but if I have to, I just go to Amazon. But you could have the best day in traffic if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's so much at our fingertips that we don't have to do. We don't have to effort. This is an effortless thing. It's who we are. Our essential nature, our true north is well-being.
Absolutely.
And that's underneath thought.
You are designed to be well. You
are
designed to be, you are self-healing. You are self-cleaning. You don't have to, like, go and hook yourself up to a waste station to purge at least most of us do not. I know there's some exceptions, but
exactly.
but we are self-healing, self-regulating, self-cleaning machines.
Yeah.
And to think otherwise, to your point earlier about 119 million people have ADHD on the planet.
I think there's even more. Undiagnosed. I mean,
probably.
Yeah.
But if we play the card of Darwinism,
yes,
y'all would be gone, right? Like, if that was the situation, it would be eventually eliminated from the species. And if it hasn't been, it's not a damaged or broken thing. It's just something that's needed in a different way. And I think we can lose sight of that so quickly, because so often we want people to have the same ideas, beliefs, thoughts, ways of thinking, ways of being, because we like predictability, we like safety, like the thing we talked about earlier. Totally.
Brain.
Survival.
Yeah.
But I'm like, what if it's exactly what we need? What if it's exactly what we need?
What if you let life live? Life's got you. What if we let life live us, and seeing that you're never going to beat the system, but just like, if you, like, I used to be fearful of flying. I had a whole bunch of thinking on it was a irrational phobia, obviously. And even if I didn't go to take a fear of flying course at age 15, it was I was ahead of my time, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a nerdy thing to do. But
start them while they're young.
Yeah.
It's your mental health family, man. They knew what was going on. You got the upgrade early at birth.
The DSM-5 was in all of our bookshelves, and every new edition too, and the PDR.
Oh yeah, there you go.
The red and the black version. Yes, we had the red and the black one. I think there's another color too. Well, now it's all online. Anyways, you don't have to look too far for, you're quiet. If you, ladies and gentlemen, whether you have a neurodiverse mind or purple mind or a peculiar mind, or just whatever kind of mind you have on, whether it's an Apple or IBM or whatever kind of, operating system you have between your ears, this moment right now that you're listening to us in this moment is the greatest moment of your life. In this moment, I don't care if you live in a shack-don shack in Beverly Hills, or in a mansion in Beverly Hills, or a shack-don shack somewhere, or, you know, you're young or old, healthy or sick. Every moment of your life that you are alive is pretty much the best moment of your life. My uncle passed away a couple months ago from leukemia, and even his last hours, his last days, he was cracking jokes, and you know, I mean, he was still in a lot of pain. It was horrible, but you see the expansiveness in the moment. You see how amazing like each moment of life is underneath the noise. Like I'm sitting here drinking a kombucha, talking to you, what, 1,500 miles, 2,000 miles away, probably in Canada on this amazing piece of technology. And we're essentially sharing the same experience. We don't have different lives. We have different jobs, culturally. Okay. But essentially we're all the same. The problem is we're all enlightened. We just don't know it. And because we're all enlightened, that doesn't mean like you have a, get out of jail free pass. There are consequences for actions. Like my client who was, got the DUI and had to do a little bit of time and spend some time in a recovery center and et cetera. But that doesn't mean anything. We all have this psychological innocence within us. It's, we all living this human psychology, but the human psychology is made up, all of it, by a mind that loves you. And the more you see it without pushing yourself to see it, you could be in the bathroom. I don't know. You could be like drinking a kombucha, talking to a brilliant human being. You could be like driving in your car, going to, I don't know, going to pay your bookie off. It doesn't matter. You see it. We see it all the time. We're literally in a walking meditation all day long. We just don't pay attention to it because the noise is so much more fun. We love the drama.
Yeah.
Drama,
oh my God.
drama.
Become unavailable for drama.
Right?
It's just, it'll take you out. And I think one thing that you keep saying that like directly and indirectly is like, if you're just here now, all that's if you're present to all that's happening right now, all I'm really doing is sitting on a couch and I'm breathing and I'm having a conversation with another human. That's all that's really happening right now. And that level of like the what am I doing later? Oh, I've got to edit this. I got to like, that's all gone.
Right.
And that I can just be here now. It took me years, but I think I got it, like, especially
it might
right
be a
now,
bumper
like,
sticker, ladies and gentlemen. And every Subaru in North America. Sorry,
right.
that's terrible. But it is, or Vermont. But it's the truth. I give you an example. Like you don't have to, there's all these Instagram memes. You could spend the whole day, you can go on Instagram, just flip through it. I'm guilty of it too. But you really don't have to look far. That if a little bit of effort, like you get the ball rolling in your life and you stay present and you don't get knocked off course. And even if you do, that's okay too, by some heavy thinking. It's kind of like, I used to love surfing. I love the water. I grew up next to the beach most of my life, whether it was on the East Coast or here. And, when you paddle out and waiting for a wave, you'll get a wave if you wait for it. It's a 100% probability, right? Same thing with life. Like, we all have this gift, whatever you want in life, you got it, just keep paddling out,
Yeah.
and just wait. And the wave's always going to come. It may not come exactly when you want it to come, but, again, once you relax into hope, there's always hope, even for the terminal cancer patient. And once we like kind of see that like life is really simple, it really is, but we overcomplicate it because our brain, our intellect on purpose complicates things, not because it wants to make your life hell. It just doesn't know any better. And it's always analyzing and figuring out stuff. Simplicity is one word I would share with any neurodiverse person. Keep it simple. Don't overthink it. Don't allow yourself to get caught up in the machine code, because, and if you do, that's fine too. I mean, it's completely fine. But if you do, just know that like you'll be okay. Like we are always okay. Always. The Ukrainians are going to be okay. And the example of it is they saw their okayness in the subway tunnel singing the Ukrainian national anthem. They weren't on Instagram. They weren't on an Instagram. I mean, I saw it because one person was, but these people had nothing. Like they have the clothes on their back and maybe a little bit of food, and they don't know what the future is going to be.
No.
But they're so present, and they're seeing who they are in this moment. So present. And that's who we are. You know, that's who all of us are. And you see, like, it is that simple. It really is. You're just not paying attention.
No. So just slow down, drop in. Okay. So we're running it near the end of our time. So we will, I'll pull out some gold from you and I'll ask you for some key takeaways. So simplicity is one of them. You mentioned that. Getting present is another one. What else should we, like, what are some key takeaways that you want people to walk away with having heard this conversation?
That as much as we feel our thinking, as much as when we're anxious, overwhelmed, depressed, pick your favorite emotion, just know that that's not real. That especially if you're frustrated, another emotion, sit with it. Just notice it. Don't overthink it. Just notice why, even if your brain's blaming the person for why you're angry, your coworker or whoever, just how could that make any sense? If all day long we're reminded of the quiet, like we see it all day long, we drop into this unusual calm all day long. We just don't pay attention to enough. You know, I don't know, like today I was just like, had no reason to be content about it. I was just content for no reason. You know that feeling?
It's a juicy feeling.
Right. But you have bills to pay and you got like you know, and you're not, you know, you're tired and whatever, you know, like life. Like I've had panic. I mean, once I kind of understood this understanding, I've had panic attacks and pulled over to the side of the road and got back on the freeway again. Like no problem. Like,
yeah, the bounce back is real. Like you can bounce back fast
because you see it, like you see the illusion. Pay attention to the quiet more. The more you pay attention to the quiet, the more you'll see what I'm pointing to. The more you'll see, like, that's essentially like the gift.
Those natural pauses, those natural breaks are like moments where you can just be like, oh my God. Yeah. Oh, that's so juicy.
It's so juicy. It's like, it's, you don't have to watch an ASMR YouTube. I know you'd like watch a whole bunch afterwards, but it's sitting out on your porch at night and just looking into the nothingness. It's putting on your favorite mixtape. Well, not mixtape. So I'm aging myself. Put on your favorite Spotify playlist. You're just sitting there. It's eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's talking to your grandma on the phone. It's you know, sitting, you know, laying in bed with your lover or your partner or your dog. I don't know. It's those moments. That's what I'm talking about. And also, ladies and gentlemen, pay attention to when, like, all of a sudden an hour and 17 minutes went by so quickly. Like,
so fast.
Yeah. So
I'm like, I think I was in a meditation this entire time. I'm like, what? This was delicious. This was divine.
This is juicy.
This is so juicy. Well, I am so grateful that you were on this. Find the stillness, take the gaps, breathe into them. I'm going to do that tonight. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I want to know where people can find you. Tell us what you're up to, what they can do with you, where they can find you.
Yes. You can check out my podcast. It's called The Fearless. Now we're on Apple, Spotify, all the major podcast platforms. And anyone that is interested in who is neurodiverse or is a coach or, you know, has a great story to share on their journey, you can email me. My website is Samled Consulting. You can hit the contact me. We're booking new guests for April and May. You can check out the services I offer as a coach on my website. It's samledconsulting.com.
LED for those.
LED.
Yeah. Like the bright, shiny light that lasts forever.
Right. Like red light therapy.
There you go.
Right. LED light. Sam Led Consulting. Anywhere I want that. SamLedConsulting.com. And my Insta is Sam Led Consulting. You can contact me at any of those places, and let's have a chat.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us and
Thank you.
sharing your
Thank
time
you.
and your
Oh my God.
energy. This
This
was
is so
so
cool.
good. I had so much fun.
This is the best way to spend a Friday night. Seriously, this is good.
Honestly,
Good
you know what?
times.
I thought in my 30s, my Friday nights would look a little different, but here we are. But this is actually better
Yeah.
than I thought. You know, like I did not imagine this, but this is, if I knew what I know now, I would choose this, you know?
Right?
I didn't know, but now I know. And so now I
Because you
choose
go
differently.
somewhere else.
Oh my God.
Fearless
Yeah.
now.
The Fearless Now. Well, thank you again, Sam.
Oh yeah, my book's coming out too.
Oh
So
yes. Keep your eyes peeled.
Keep your eyes peeled. And we've changed the title too. So you can go on my website for updates. But yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Sam. It was such a pleasure to have you, and go give him a follow. Sam Led Consulting on Instagram, samledconsulting.com, and keep an eye out for all the cool things he's bringing. And if you want to be one thought away from mental health, he is the man to talk with. It is a possibility. It is available for you. And his voice is so calming. Don't you just want to listen to this again? Like I'm going to listen to it again.
Don't listen to my words. Look for a good feeling.
Literally, completely agreed.
Oh, thank you.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you so much, and have a great evening. If this podcast has landed with you, served you, provided value, or you believe you know someone that it will do that for, please share it, leave a review. Thank you again so much. I cannot wait to see you next time. Take care.